Hello, my name is Janette Rallison and also CJ Hill. I've written over 30 books and I've sold over 1 million print copies. And I am here today to talk to you about point of view. And let's see if we can get that off there. Okay, here's just some of my books. All right, point of view is a very important thing to know about if you want to be a writer, which I hope all of you do. It's an awesome, fun job. And so point of view is really the lens that the reader is looking through when they're reading this story. It's who is telling the story, whose head are we in? And there's several different ways you can approach this. You might have learned about some of them in school. There's first person, there's third person, there's omniscient, and there's third person limited, which is also known as fly on the wall. It's sort of like we're in nobody's head, we're just outside observing. So I'm going to show you some examples of all of these points of view using a couple of paragraphs from my book, My Double Life, which should still be free on barnesandnoble.com, the ebook, for a while. I don't know when you're viewing this, but for the next couple of weeks. Anyway, okay, so this is Alexia asking, or she's already asked a guy to a girl ask guy dance, and she wants to know his answer. He hasn't given it to her yet. When class ended, I leaned over my desk and tapped Trevor with my pencil. Hey, I said, keeping my voice light. I didn't hear your answer about the dance. Did you want to go or not? He scooped his books from the desk, his expression guarded. Oh, that. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he gave a really slow, sure, as though he might talk himself out of it sometime during the answer. Great, I said. I didn't mean it. Clearly, his excitement level about our date ranked somewhere near being swarmed by hungry mosquitoes. And now I was not only going to have to pay for this date, I would have to endure his lack of enthusiasm during it. I smiled at him, said I'd give him the details later, then spent the rest of the day wishing I'd never asked him. Okay, so that's I. That's the first person. I is telling the story. And if we're going to look at the internal thought used in the point of view, which is really very connected to point of view, internal thought, you can see that almost half of this is some sort of internal thought. That it's straight internal thought is in purple. And then keeping my voice light, we know we're in her head, obviously, because she's the one keeping her voice light. And as though he might talk himself out of it sometime during the answer, we know that that's her interpretation of how he's acting. He might have completely different thoughts. We don't know, but that's her interpretation. Okay, so that's first person. And the advantages to first person is that it has a very intimate feel. You feel like you really get to know that person on a deep level. It feels like a best friend's telling you the story, or maybe you're reading somebody's journal. Don't do that. That's not very nice. It's the easiest point of view for new writers to master. I always suggest to writing students that even if they want to write in a different point of view, that they start out with first, because they'll avoid so many mistakes that people end up making in the other point of views. It's very easy to show main character's thoughts. It just feels natural to go from dialogue into thought. And it's very common in YA novels. You guys have probably read a lot of first person novels. It does have a really big disadvantage though, and that's that all the action must be seen by your main character. And there's sometimes when I've written in first person that like, oh, I really want to show the readers a scene, but the main character's not there. So there's no way for me to show them that scene. So that is a disadvantage. Third person, that's he or her. When class ended, Alexia leaned over her desk and tapped Trevor with her pencil. Hey, she said, keeping her voice light. I didn't hear your answer about the dance. Did you want to go or not? He scooped his books off the desk, his expression guarded. Oh, that. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he gave a really slow sure, as though he might talk himself out of it during the answer. Great, she said. She didn't mean it. Okay, I won't read the rest, but you can see. Sorry, you can see that it's the same. It's just the only things that have been changed here are the I is changed into she, which is why I say you can, even if you want to write in third person, if you're a new writer, I suggest you write in that first person and then change it. And here we see the same amount of internal thought. And really, there should be in third person the same amount of internal thought that there is in first person. Okay, so advantages of third person. People like to read this. A lot of people only read third person. It's easy to superimpose yourself in this kind of story. There's a psychological reason for that we'll not go into because we don't have time, but you'll just have to trust me on that one. You can have more than one point of view character. I write a series called Slayers, and in it, I have point of views from the villain, the mentor, the heroine, two heroes, and another slayer as well. So you can be telling lots of stories and getting to know lots of characters. So the story can follow the action. Every important action scene, you can have a point of view character in there and show that really cool scene. And it is the most common point of view in all genres. So you've probably also read these in young adult novels as well. There's a big disadvantage to this if you're a writer, and that is it's easy for new writers to make errors while using this point of view. And I'm going to tell you the big errors that people make so that hopefully you can avoid them while you're writing in this one. Okay, this is Omniscient. And Omniscient is, it's tricky. I don't suggest new writers use this one. It's the narrator is telling the story, and the narrator has information that the characters don't. So sometimes the narrator is telling the reader information that even the characters don't know. So this isn't a great example of Omniscient. This isn't great writing, what I'm about to read, but I just did this way to show you what Omniscient is. When class ended, Alexia leaned over her desk and tapped Trevor with her pencil. Hey, I didn't hear your answer about the dance. Did you want to go or not? Little did Alexia know that Trevor only saw her as a backup plan, a girl to flirt with if no one better was around. He scooped his books off the desk. Oh, that, sure. If he'd been smart, he would have jumped at the chance. But Trevor, like a lot of guys in high school, was an idiot. Okay, so there you can see that that's not how either of those characters is thinking about themselves, but the narrator is kind of, telling the story and letting the readers in on information. Okay, so advantages. The author can dispense information to the readers that the characters don't know. Sometimes that's valuable. The reader gets to know the inner workings of many characters. The disadvantage is that it can feel more like the author's story than the main character's story. And sometimes if you're an agent or editor and you read Omniscient, if the author didn't do it well, they'll just think that you've messed up third person and reject it. You don't want that. So yeah, it can be hard to work and confusing for the readers. But if you want to look at some well-written Omniscient, the series of unfortunate events that has a really funny narrator. It works very well. The Artemis Fowl series, Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, and that asterisk down there is to remind me to tell you that very often in fantasy, the author starts out in an omniscient point of view and to set up the world. So it's omniscient for 2 pages or 2 paragraphs, and then it goes into third person, and that's very normal. So that's not you. So usually you have to start with one point of view and then you carry that through the whole novel. It would be very jarring if you started with a first person and was saying I, and then suddenly went to third person halfway through the novel, right? So pick one. Okay, so Fly on the Wall, and this. Okay, I'll just read this and then we'll talk about it. When class ended, Alexia leaned over her desk and tapped Trevor with her pencil. Hey, I didn't hear your answer about the dance. Did you want to go or not? He scooped his books off the desk. Oh, that. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he gave a really slow, sure. Great, she said. Now, probably you can see the problem with this right now is that without that internal thought, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why it's important. It just isn't very good. It just kind of feels like flat dialogue, right? So you'd be very hard pressed to find a whole novel written in this point of view. But I included it because you're going to have to live through high school. You are going to have an English teacher that makes you read at least short stories that are told this way. And so you just know what it is. But yeah, don't write your novel this way. Okay, so advantages to the Fly on the Wall. Perhaps the author doesn't want to give away the main character's internal thoughts for artistic reasons, or in case the main character happens to be a psychotic killer or something. In other words, there aren't very many advantages, if any, to this. So yeah, just don't do it. Disadvantages are the writing seems sparse and emotionless. People keep on wondering what the main character's reaction to everything is, especially in the tense scenes. The author has to work doubly hard to convey emotions through actions and dialogue. So not our favorite. All right, the big mistake in third person is ping-ponging point of view. So, and this is basically means that we're in one head for a few paragraphs or a paragraph or a sentence, and then we jump into somebody else's head, and then we jump back, and the reader is never really quite sure whose head we're in. And so that's that will get you rejected very, very quickly. From agents and editors. So the rule is, because you can remember in third person, you can have more than one point of view character. So you change that at the chapter breaks or the scene breaks. And then, when there's a new chapter, a new scene, the very first sentence has to tell you whose mind we're seeing from this. So we're going to have a line that will tell you what somebody is thinking or feeling, or, so that we know, oh, we're in Tori's point of view for this chapter. Okay, so I am going to show you an example of ping-ponging point of view. This is not how the scene was written in my book. It's A Mall World After All. I rewrote it to show you, yeah, don't do this. And then you're going to have a chance to fix it. But okay, so this is showing you head hopping. All right. Bryant is sorry about the spiders, Colton said, wondering why Charlotte couldn't just let go of the past. Charlotte clenched her hands together. Oh, and so we're in that first paragraph, we're in Colton's point of view, right? Because we know he's wondering why Charlotte can't let go of the past. I forgot to tell you that this is a story about a girl, Charlotte, who was bullied in junior high, and by this guy named Bryant. He put spiders in her desk and stuff. And now they're in high school, and Colton is a friend of both of theirs, and he's trying to help them, help her at least forgive him. Charlotte clenched her hands together. He isn't sorry. Thoughts of those painful junior high years were still fresh in her mind. Okay, so we jumped from Colton's mind into hers. Colton pulled out of the parking lot and drove away from the school. Instead of yelling at Charlotte, he applied his anger to the gas pedal. What do you want from Bryant? An apology? Fine, he'll give you one. Okay, so this is where it's a little bit confusing, because he applied his anger to the gas pedal. So we're probably in Colton's point of view, but actually we still could be in Charlotte. She could just be assuming that the reason why he's going faster is he's angry. And so this is the problem with head hopping. And one of the reasons why you don't want to do it is because eventually your readers won't know whose head you're in, and you don't want to, mess up their story that way. Charlotte tried to push away the motion that clutched at her throat. He hasn't changed. Okay, so we're in Charlotte's. But Colton knew the truth, as though he'd been able to peer into Charlotte's mind. Now we're back to Colton's. What you mean is you don't want him to change because you enjoy hating him too much. Colton parked the car, got out, and opened Charlotte's door. Come on, Charlotte, you've wanted an apology for a long time. You're finally going to get it. It doesn't count if you make him tell me he's sorry, she said. But even as she said it, she didn't believe Bryant would apologize. So then we're back to hers. Okay, so this is your little assignment for the day. I'm going to give you 5 minutes and pick either Charlotte or Colton to be your point of view character, and do it either in first person or third person, either I or she, he, and just, you can add whatever internal thought you want. Just make sure that we're only in one person's head. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, that's close enough for 5 minutes. Was it hard to do or was it easy? I'm hoping it wasn't that hard, but I'm going to show you how I really wrote it and also some other examples. How most people fix this is to just go through the dialogue and the action and keep it all the same, but just take out the either one internal thought or the other. And so it ends up sort of like this. But let's look at how much internal thought is in this. So in that case, if you had done this and you were in Colton's third person, then you would have left in wondering why Charlotte couldn't just let go of the past, which it's okay, but it could be a little bit better. It's the author kind of telling us that he's wondering instead of just showing us his thoughts. And if you did actually show us his thoughts, A+ for you. Then he applied his anger to the gas pedal, and then one other piece. But do you remember how much we had in the beginning that was internal thought? So there's a way we can make it better. All right, this is how I actually wrote it. Let me see if I can move myself around so that I can read it. Okay. Bryant is sorry about the spiders. No, he isn't. I wasn't trying to argue with Colton. I just didn't understand how Colton could be Bryant's friend and not realize certain facts about him. Bryant didn't care how other people felt. I didn't think for a moment he regretted anything he'd done to me. Colton pulled out of the parking lot and drove away from the school. His speed picked up the farther we went. What do you want from Bryant? An apology? Fine, he'll give you one. He hasn't changed, I said. What you mean is you don't want him to change because you enjoy hating him too much. He didn't understand. He'd never been unpopular, ridiculed, or pushed to the fringes of school life day in and day out. I'm going to interrupt this for a second to point out something. And that is that if I hadn't been in first person, this might be confusing. People might think, oh, I just switched I just switched into his mind. But since we're in first person, then we know she's making that assumption about him. If I was writing this in third person, I might need to tweak that a little bit just to make it clear that I didn't just hop into his head. Okay. I didn't say anything else to Colton. I couldn't. If I spoke, I would either start yelling or break into tears. I knew I'd regret either of those things. So I sat silently in his car and held my hair in a ponytail so the wind wouldn't whip it around my face into uncontrollable tingles. Colton turned off the car, got out, and came around and opened my door for me. He bent forward, closer to me, and turned on his intense girl-melding gaze. Come on, Charlotte, you've wanted an apology for a long time. You're finally going to get it. It doesn't count if you make him tell me he's sorry, I said, but I pulled myself out of the car anyway. To tell the truth, I couldn't imagine Bryant would apologize to me, even with Colton there forcing the issue. He'd do something obnoxious like laugh or tell me he no longer thought of me in spider terms because I graduated to hound dog status, which would be awful, but at least Colton would finally see I was right about Bryant. Okay, so you can see we went a lot deeper into her mind and her internal thought in this, and that is usually a better choice. So let's look and see how much internal thought we have in this piece. Okay, well, it's not letting me because I moved my picture. There we go. Okay, so you can see there's a lot more internal thought in here. That's the purple, and even this and turned on his intense girl melting gaze. That's also in her point of view. She's describing something in her point of view. And that's telling us something about her, like she sort of likes him. Okay, now I wanted to show you a couple examples. I've done this in workshops before, and these next two are examples of how people wrote this scene using a different point of view. And I want you to notice how much it changes the entire scene. The dialogue is still the same. They're still, in the car going to see him. But just by changing the internal thought, we can change a lot. Okay. Bryant is sorry about the spiders, Colton said, lying through his teeth. He isn't sorry. Colton didn't think so either. What do you want from Bryant? An apology? Fine, he'll give you one. Colton would force Bryant to apologize, if only to get Charlotte to quit wringing her hands in that annoying way of hers. Sometimes she grated on Colton's nerves. He hasn't changed, she said. Neither have you, Colton thought. What you mean is you don't want to change because you don't want him to change because you enjoy hating him too much. Charlotte had hated hundreds of people since kindergarten. Colton parked the car, got out, and opened Charlotte's door. Come on, Charlotte, you've wanted an apology for a long time. You're finally going to get it. that lot of good it was going to do. Colton had offered an apology of his own just the day before for something inconsequential. Charlotte had punched him. He was so sick of trying to play the peacemaker. It doesn't count if you make him tell me he's sorry. But Colton thought, he'll never say it if I don't. No one's ever that sorry. Okay, so did you see this is completely different now? You probably felt for Charlotte during the last scene, right? You were like, oh, poor her. And this one, you're like, oh, she's horrible, right? So that just kind of shows you the importance of that internal thought and why you absolutely don't want to leave it out. You absolutely want to be deep in that character's mind. Okay, so here's another way the scene could have gone doing a different point of view. Bryant is sorry about the spiders, Colton said. Why couldn't Charlotte let go of the past? Boys didn't have a problem doing that. Maybe it was a girl thing. Not that she didn't have a reason for it. Colton had been in the junior high class when Bryant had hidden a spider in Charlotte's desk. He'd laughed along with his friends when Charlotte opened her desk and shrieked, but part of him wished he'd talked Bryant out of doing it. Face it, he told himself, you had a crush on her then, and you still do. He pulled out of the parking lot and drove away from the school, asking himself for the 100th time why he was trying to help Charlotte and Bryant get over their feud. Okay, so now we see a completely different picture. In that first one, we knew that she sort of liked him, but we have no idea whether he liked her. In the second one, we know Charlotte was horrible. And in this one, it's, oh, how sweet. Colton has a crush on her, right? So again, this is the power of internal thought and why you need to use it correctly. So this brings us to the second big mistake. The first one, remember, is head hopping. The second one is not having enough internal thought. As you saw from those examples, like the internal thought really is important. So as you're doing your exercises and writing in the future, keep track of how much internal thought you're having. You can always overwrite it and then cut it out later if you have too much. Okay, so here's a few more point of view rules. Basically, it boils down to this. Don't write it unless your character would actually be thinking about it, because we're deeply in their mind. We don't want to remind the reader that actually the author is behind that curtain pulling the strings of the story, right? We don't want them to think of that. We want them to just really believe that this main character is telling the story. So, for example, does this sound natural? I walked down the street while my long strawberry blonde hair swished around my shoulders and my blue eyes twinkled mischievously. No, not really. That doesn't sound natural. If you have a character who's thinking that, then she's a special character, right? And pretty vain too. So you would never write that in first person again. So that's why I always tell people, new writers, write in first person. You'll avoid mistakes, and then you can change it. Because I've read so many manuscripts where in third person, they'll say, Chelsea walked down the street while her long strawberry blonde hair swished around her shoulders and her blue eyes twinkled mischievously. And it still doesn't work. The author just doesn't realize it doesn't work, because who's telling that story? The character isn't thinking about how they look probably, and they can't see what their eyes are doing. So again, you have to be in that main character's head and see the world how they're seeing it, not how the author is seeing it. So you have to think, because you have to put descriptions in there of your own character and of other characters. So you have to think, how would the character actually describe himself or herself? And those are the words you use. Different, your mother's going to describe how you look very different than your best friend is, huh? So stay true to how your character would describe it. Don't let the author's point of view slip into your character's internal thoughts. For example, would a macho lumberjack think the dainty and charming woman swept across my path? Probably not. I mean, I don't know any lumberjacks personally, but the point is that all of your characters should not sound like you. Your characters, some of them are going to be older, some of them are going to be younger. They're going to have different backgrounds, different educations, different statuses, things like that. So let them all talk like how they would really talk. Okay, so we're going to give you an exercise. I don't know whether we have time for it. I'm bad at keeping track of time, didn't check and see when I started. But if we don't have time for this, then it's just homework. So I want you to pick one of these characters. So we have a dingy teenage girl, and I apologize for any of you who are cheerleaders. I know you're not dingy, but there's only so many pictures that you can get on the internet, right? A crazy cat lady. And by the way, do not ask me how many cats I have. It's an embarrassing topic for me. Or a cynical cop detective, or someone who just had their heart broken. Okay, so pick one of these characters, and then you're going to write a description of, and it can be there in first person or third person, but remember, you are one of those people now. You have to channel their thoughts. So how would they describe either a birthday party, the pair of socks they got for Christmas, your character's crazy Uncle Ned who wants to storm Area 51, your character's thoughts when they try to pay for a hamburger and realize they left their wallet at home, or a love song that just came on the radio. Okay, so a cynical police officer is probably going to have different thoughts about that love song than the person who just got their heart broken, right? All right, so I'm glad I had this opportunity to talk to you about point of view, and just remember to have fun while you're writing. Writing should be fun, and yeah, and keep on writing and keep on reading, and have a great day.